Good morning, everyone. So I have an exciting announcement. The Resource Queen is starting a podcast. I know. I'm so excited. Lots of people have been asking me, like, when am I going to do a podcast? And how is that going to work and all that? And I've been saying I was going to do it. And I decided this month is actually Family Stories Month. So I decided this was a perfect time to launch my podcast. So be on the lookout for that. It's coming in the next week. The first episode will actually feature me and my story. And the podcast is going to be entitled From the Projects to Private Practice. So it's going to be talking about my journey, how I went from growing up in Reagan courts and the projects. That's where I started life, single parent mother, no father. And then later on in my 20s, I found myself back there as a mother, a single mother with 4 kids. I'm back in the projects, and how I went from that story to where I am now, having a private practice and all these things. So it's going to be my story. So I thought that would be a good place to start the podcast to understand about who I am, where I come from, and why I'm so passionate about the work that I do. So that's my story. And so as a teaser for the upcoming podcast, and also to inspire everyone, everyone, I hope anyway, whoever gets inspired will be inspired. I thought I would share my story um, about the roach in my backpack. So this is something I was going to save for my book for later, but I said this is too good not to share. So I'm going to share it now. So when I was in, I have a associate's degree in an associate's of arts degree from University of Arkansas Fort Smith. Have a bachelor of arts degree in psychology from University of Arkansas Fort Smith. Have a master's degree from John Brown University in marriage and family therapy and mental health counseling. And as you can see, I'm now a licensed marriage and family therapist and mental health counselor in private practice near St. Louis. Love what I do, but I didn't just show up here. There's a whole lot of backstory. So the roach in my backpack kind of tags into that. So one of the things I do want to share just as a little bit before I share that story is, and for a lot of a lot of individuals, I know a lot of my grad school colleagues, they were kind of expected to go to grad school. I remember us talking and they were like, yeah, I was going to go to college and my husband is even, that was kind of the plan for them. College was never the plan for me. I come from a family in Arkansas. It's very big sports. Sports is a big thing. My family was a big sports family. So the people that did go to college, they went for sports. The hope would be they would go to the NBA or the NFL. I think we've had maybe one family member that kind of went and that was it. But that was kind of it. And that was expected. Or you ended up in poverty, still living in the same town. And maybe you worked at like OK Foods. That was a big chicken plant. That was the expectation. I was expected to go to the chicken plant, maybe have a couple of kids, wasn't really expected to get married. That was kind of it. That was it for me. That was the expectation. And I went to college when I was 18 and I went to 19. I failed out both times. Within the first semester, I think my GPA was like a 1.7. It was real bad. And fast forward a couple years later, well, before that, I was 16 when I had my first child. I was 19 when I got pregnant with my second. So I had her at 20. My third child I had at 23. My fourth child I had at 25. So by the time I was 25, I had 4 kids and they have different fathers. So you do the math. The odds of me graduating from anything from high school was low. Definitely not graduating from college. I think it's like less than 2%. It's a very low percentage, but I did it. And so I think that story is very inspiring. So that's the kind of the backstory. So I go to college, third time's a charm. I do really well and I did graduate. In the meantime, when one of the things that I used to be very embarrassed about was that I lived in Reagan courts. In fact, the way that I dress now, I've been dressing this way for like 20 years. So I lived in the projects and every day I would dress up. I would leave my house. I would leave all that stuff behind. And I would always tell myself, I'm going to go on to bigger and better things. And this is where I'm at, but I'm going to go on to do bigger and better things. And so when I would go to school, I just would try my best and things like that because it was me and my kids. That was it. And when you got kids like that, if I fail, we all fail. So I'm like, I got to go hard. I got to do this. And I did. And I did really well in school. But I remember my sophomore year, I took this psychology class. And I had this teacher. I want to say her name was Dr. Linda. I may be wrong. I don't remember. She was the nicest person ever. I really enjoyed psychology. And it makes sense now. Here I am. I was like the top student. I did really well on all the tests. And it just came naturally to me. It just flowed. But there was one day I remember in particular, she said, Jessica, can I talk to you after class? And I remember thinking, this is weird. So anyway, I was like, this is, oh, I ain't did nothing. I know I ain't cheated, nothing like that. So we kind of go over to her office, which is right by the classroom, and she's very nervous, and she just was like, I've never had to say this to a student, and I don't know how to say this. And I'm thinking, what the heck's going on? Like, I don't know. And then she says, oh, what happened is one of the students noticed that there was a roach on the floor. And when she said that, I knew. But she says they noticed there was a roach on the ground and in the classroom, and they said that they saw it come from your backpack when you left your backpack open. And she was just really nervous, and she's like, I don't know what to say. And I just was like, and immediately the shame hit. I felt it. And I just was like, oh my gosh. And I remember I said to her, oh, it's, yeah, I'm sorry about that. I apologize. It will never happen again. And it was this awkward exchange, and I hurry up and got out of there. I went to my car and I broke down. I don't cry all the time. I don't cry sometimes, but it really hit me, because here I am trying to get out of the projects, trying to get my family in a better life. And it bothered me so much, because I know the person who did it. I'm pretty sure I know it was. And this person never came to me to say, hey, Jessica, yeah. They could have came to me, and I'm always so worried about who else knows about it. And I'm just very embarrassed. And so I just cried, because I couldn't help myself where I lived in that position. I couldn't move. That's where I was at. It takes time to do these things. And I was so embarrassed and all that stuff. But I resolved that day that I was going to make it. And I was not going to allow the roach in my backpack to stop me from being successful. In fact, I said, I'm going to use this to fuel me. And one day it's going to be in my book. And now it's going to be in my podcast. One day it'll be in my book. But I said, this ain't going to stop me. And interestingly enough, I successfully passed that class. I made an A. That person, they did not finish the class. There were several who did not. Fast forward 2 years later, I got my bachelor's degree. I was a top student. I graduated summa cum laude. I walked our class of humanities out as a top student. I graduated with a 3.98 GPA. Went on 3 years later. I got my master's degree in marriage and family therapy and community counseling. Graduated with a 3.97 GPA. All right. I did all this with 4 kids, single mother, not as many supports. I had my fiance, he supported me. But that's pretty much, I didn't have a lot of support, but I did it. And that roach in my backpack never stopped me. And I always said that where I come from, I'm not ever going to be ashamed of that ever again. I'm not ashamed that I was raised by a single parent, Black mom in poverty, that we didn't always have the best. She did the best she could, but we struggled. I'm not ashamed that my ACE score is a 9, and I went through sexual abuse. I witnessed domestic violence, all these things. I'm not ashamed of any of those things, or even the roach in my backpack in that poverty situation with roaches and rats and all that stuff where I come from, because all those things have made me the person I am today. That's why when I started my career after grad school and I was paired with families involved with juvenile probation and DCS, and they would say, and I say, I know this pattern, this is what's going to happen. I would tell them in advance. They're like, how do you know? Part of it was my education in school, but part of it was also because I grew up in a lot of those things. You see, those life experiences can help shape who we are. So never be ashamed of where you come from, your story. You don't feel like you have to hide it. Don't worry what people think about you. Who you are, everything that you've experienced is helping prepare you for the next phase in life. And yes, some people in your own family, friends, they're not going to support you. They're not going to believe you, but that doesn't matter. The people who will support you, who you need, like who eventually became my husband, they're going to show up for you. They're going to be there for you. And you have to show up for yourself. Just like I made a decision that if I failed, me and the kids were going to fail. And we all wasn't going to fail because I was all they had. I made that decision that roach in my backpack, I was going to use that as something to help propel me to success versus something that I looked up on as a shameful thing or something like that, because it wasn't my fault that I was there and I was in poverty, but I could do something about it, and I did. So anyway, that's my story, the roach in my backpack. I look forward to bringing you my podcast in the future. It's coming in next week. And like I said, I'm going to be inviting some of my therapist friends and friends from other walks of life. So look forward to that. But this was a little snippet. All right. See ya. Bye-bye.